Hi everyone, good evening.
How the fuck do you know?
Good evening, sir.
So guys, we'll wait for a few minutes and then we will be starting the session. All right, I think we'll start with the session. So once again, good evening everyone. Can you all hear me? Am I audible? Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. So guys, I'll share the link for the quiz. Today's quiz will have a combination of both theory and practical. So you can, first take the theory questions and then take the practical. That's up to you. This data set is the same. Customer analysis data, what you used on the previous class is what you will be taking now. So I'm sharing the link for the quiz. I'll give you all 5 minutes. Complete this quiz and then we will discuss the answers. Right, so the link for the quiz is shared on the chat. Please make sure you take it. Everyone, you have 2 more minutes. Please try to take the quiz. All right, I guess we can go ahead. Guys, have you completed the quiz, everyone? Okay, so I'll show you the answers for this. There are 3 practical questions and 2 theory questions. Let's go with the theory questions first. How can you sort values in a pivot table in ascending or descending order? What is the answer for this? For the 4th question, what is the answer? How can you sort values in a pivot table in ascending or descending order? 2. By right clicking a value, choosing sort A to Z or Z to A. Now A to Z or Z to A can also be transferred into ascending or smallest to largest and largest to smallest. So that depends if you're using a text data or you're using a numerical data, but this is the solution by right clicking a value and choosing A to Z or Z to A sorting. If you apply a value filter in pivot table, what does it do? What does a value filter does? Option B, which is filters data based on numeric conditions. Right? If you have any numerical conditions and you want to apply a filter, then you can use the value filter option. We also did a top 10, top 5 those values also. That is how you can work with the value filter, but its major purpose is to work with numerical conditions, where you want the numerical condition to be specifically greater or specifically lesser. Let's go ahead and let's solve these 3 questions. Now, these 3 questions are practical, which means you need to solve it in your pivot table. So give me a minute. I'll open the data. In the meantime, you can also open the data, the same customer analysis data, just open it. So here is the data. Let's talk about this data, right? So it's the same data, but we'll go and we'll discuss the question. See, in West region, what is the total recency of a specific segment? Right? Let's say the total recency of a GBQ segment. This is what is asked. Now you can do it in both ways. You either put segment in the filter or you put region in the filter. right? That's up to you. So I'll open my data. Let's insert a pivot table. So you can go to insert pivot table. Just give OK. Right. And in this pivot table, let's take the segment code and drop it on rows. And let's take the recency. Since it's asking total recency, we will take this and we'll drop it on values. Right. So if you look carefully, it is asking for total recency. However, in some cases, you might be asked to find the average recency score or minimum recency score. Here, total. And total means sum. So we have GBQ and we have the value, but this is for the entire data. We want it only for the West region. Now there are two ways. You can take the region and you can drop it on either columns or filters. I'll drop it on filters and I'll be choosing this filter as West. Now the minute I choose this filter as West, you can see GBQ has 931. So the total recency of GBQ is 931 in the West region, not on the entire data, but only on the West region. This is how you can solve the first question. It's a combination of taking the values and identifying a filter option also. What are the top 3 segments based on total sales of fish? Right? If you want to know the top 3 segments based on total sales of fish, just have the segment code and take the fish column, drop it in values. So these are the total sales of fish. Now, however, we need only the top 3. So when you need the top 3, you can right click, just select any number, right click, sort and sort from largest to smallest. Also on row label, now we can have a look at it here directly, but still if you want to display only the 3, go to row label, value filter, top 10 and just make this as top 3. Instead of top 10, you can make it as top 3 and you can give OK. So TRX, FHB and MLW, you can see that the values are present. So this is the correct one. TRX, FHB and MLW. The third one is the correct solution. These are the top 3 segments based on total sales of fish. The last one, how many customers are there in source code 2? To get the customers in source code 2, once again, let's remove the data here. Take the source code, drop it in rows so that we have all the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And to get the number of customers, as usual, you can take the ID, drop it in value. Instead of sum of ID, just change it into count of ID. And this would give you the value. For source code 2, this is source code. The value is 517. So the number of customers in source code 2 is 517. Right. I hope you're clear on this, on the quiz on how to work with, how to work with pivot table. Okay, so Sonia, if this is your first session, I would suggest you to look at the recordings. This is actually not my 11th, but this is my 12th session. Yesterday was my 11th. Today is my 12th. We have 3 more classes tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday. I'm sharing a link. This has all the recordings of the previous classes. Please refer to the recording. And for the data set, what we will be using, I'm sharing the link again. In this data set link, download the data called as customer analysis. Everyone, not just for Sonia, anyone who has joined the class for the first time, have a look at the chat. The recordings are given and the dataset link is also given. My suggestion is attend this class fully, whatever you are understanding, good. But make sure you watch all the videos, all the other videos, whatever has been uploaded. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about today's topic. Today also it's going to be a work of pivot table, but today we will focus on 3 topics. One is pivot charts. Let's create pivot charts. Let's talk about something called as a slicer, and let's talk about probably a little bit of calculated field. We'll understand what is a calculated field and we will work. So this is our data, and just create a pivot field or a pivot table, and then we will work on this. We'll take a question and we'll try to solve that question. See, we have been creating pivot tables. Pivot tables are very good for summarizing the data, but sometimes you also need to create a visual to represent your data well. Now, we had a session specifically on data visualization. We focused on data visualization. However, there were a few limitations. For example, I want to create, the question is this, create a bar chart between region and sales of meat, or I will just say meat column. Between region and meat column, we want to create a bar chart. This sounds very simple, but if you want to do it originally on your data, you can go here, select this region. And if you want to select only meat, select this region, control, select meat. So just these two columns are selected. You can go to insert, recommended charts. And when you do recommended charts, you can see it says sum of meat by region. The chart is available. Now what happens is this is automatically a pivot chart. Right? You can see that this is automatically a pivot chart that was created. But I'm going to tell you another way in which you can create this pivot chart, which would be much helpful. Right? Don't worry about what what is it that I did today. I'll give you a recap. So you just go to sheet 4, take this region column, drop the region on rows, and drop this meat on values. Now, if you have a look, we have this data here. The South region is spending $1,71,000 on meat. East is 62,000. Central is 97,000, and so on. Now, all we need to do here is very simple. You can go to this data, go to pivot table analyze. And in this, you have an option called as a pivot chart. Right? You have an option here called as pivot chart. Just select this pivot chart. The minute you do it, you get the same chart here. Right, whatever we got before. But the difference here is now you also see the pivot table on the left side. I'll repeat once again, just create the pivot value. For each region, we need to know the sum of meat. So take the region, drop it on row, take the meat value, drop it on values. Select your pivot table, go to pivot table, analyze, and click on the pivot chart. Now this bar chart is what we want, just give OK. The minute you give OK, your pivot chart is now created. Right? You can see that the pivot chart is now created. Please try this, everyone. Try creating the pivot chart. Then we will make some changes to this and we will make this look a little better. So all you need to do is create a pivot chart, take region, drop it on rows, take meat, drop it on values, select the pivot table, go to pivot chart, analyze, and click on pivot chart. You have a pivot table analyze and click on pivot chart. This one, pivot table analyze and click on pivot chart. Your pivot chart will be available. Right? Your graph would now be available. Okay, and now let's, now that you are clear on this, I'll ask you to create some charts, but we'll make some changes here. You can go to select this chart, go to pivot chart, analyze or design. We'll focus on the design. You can select this. Now, when you select this, you can see the numbers are appearing. The data label is appearing. There are a few grid lines. You have a color, you have the title. Let's change this title. Double click on this title and you can say sales of meat across regions. Right? You can have the sales of meat across regions. So every bar has the value present. So to get something like this, select the chart, go to design, and here you have some pre-existing chart styles. Right? There are a lot of different chart styles. You can select whichever that you want to use. I'm going to select this. and now you have a chart ready. This pivot chart also gives you an option for creating filter, right? You can click on this. If you don't want a specific region, you can select OK, and that region data would not be there. But we need that. We need all the regions. So we'll not discuss more on this filters. Don't worry about filter, but you have the bar chart with you ready. Right. I hope you're clear on this. I'm going to give you a few questions and I want you to create the pivot table and create the pivot chart for those. Create a pivot chart for the average income for each education. Create a pivot chart for total web purchases across each source code. Create a pivot chart. I'm giving you 3 questions. Don't worry, I'm putting it on the chat. You'll be seeing the questions on the chat. Create a pivot chart for the market share of meat, not meat, maybe we'll take wine sales across each region. So guys, I've given you 3 questions. Try solving these 3 questions. It's 8:53. I'll give you 7 minutes. Since this is the first time that you're creating pivot charts, I'll give you 7 minutes. First, create the pivot chart and then try to convert it into a design, whatever design that you want to do. Try this, everyone. Try solving these 3 questions. And once you have done, you can just let me know on the chat. Please solve these 3 questions, everyone. Just create multiple pivot charts or multiple pivot tables, and from there you can create each of these charts. If you have created a chart, just copy paste it on the chat and you will be sent a screenshot, right? You will be having the screenshot here. Okay, if you want me to repeat, I would do that. See, the question is for us to create a pivot chart for the total sales of meat across each region. So I've created a pivot chart here. And when we have this pivot chart, you take this meat, drop it on value. You take the region, drop it on row. Just select somewhere in this pivot chart. Go to pivot table, analyze. And here you have an option called as pivot chart. Just click on it and you can give OK. The chart would be ready. And on this, you can go to design and you can choose any design that you want. You have another 4 minutes. Everyone try solving this question. So Sai Kumar, what you have is the total income, but in the question, it's asking average income. So you need to change the data to average and then create the pivot chart. We have already learned how to change it to average. So change the data to average and then we will create the pivot chart. Yeah, this is the correct one, Sai Kumar. Like this, please solve the other questions also. Guys, you have 2 more minutes. At least solve 2 questions, the first 2 questions. Third one, I'll be solving it. But try to solve at least 2 questions so that you have the practice. Guys, if you have solved, please let me know. Guys, were you able to solve at least 2? How many of you were able to solve the first 2? Third one, I'll tell you how to solve it. Okay, how about others? Okay, if you're able to solve the first 2, it is good. The second one, I'll solve it. Or the third one, I'll solve it. See, first 2 are very easy. You just need to take the data, drop it on pivot table, and then convert it into pivot chart. Now, I understand third one could be a little tricky, right? It's asking for market share of wine, but we don't have the market share of wine sales. So first, we need to get the market sales, market share, right? Once we have the market share, then we can easily get the pivot chart. So I'll be doing it here. If you want another pivot chart to be created, copy this pivot table entirely, but don't copy extra. Don't copy these extra cells. Just perfect, cells. Copy that. You can scroll down and you can paste it. Now the question is for us to identify the wine market share, the sales of wine market share. So the sum of meat I'll remove. I'll take the sales column. I'll drop it. I'm sorry, I'll take the wine column, which is the sales of wine, and you drop it on values. When you take the wine column and you drop it on values, see, we have the sum of wines present here. Now, market share, anyone here knows what do you mean by market share? The term market share, ignore analytics, ignore Excel for a minute. But what do you understand about this term market share? How many customers they have in the market? Okay, that is close. But market share means the share, what is their share in the market? Important thing to know about market share, or what do we mean by that term, is it is denoted by percentage. Market share is always denoted by percentage. It cannot be a number like this, right? It cannot be a number like this. It needs to be a percentage. Now we can manually do the calculation, but I don't want to manually do the calculation. What I'll do is I would be changing these values. Instead of this being number, I will change this into a percentage. Now, how do we change it into a percentage? Is select this. You have the sum of wines here under value. When you drag and drop, you have the sum of wine. And listen to this carefully, everyone. Click on the drop down. Go to value field settings. Here you can make the changes. If you want average, you can. If you want minimum, maximum, you can. But instead of summarize value by, go to show values as. And here in show values as, you can go with percentage of grand total. I'll repeat this once again. Take this region, drop it on row, take the wine column, drop it on value. You have this sum of wine. Click on the drop down, go to value field settings, show values as. And here in show values as, you have a lot of options: percentage of parent total, percentage of row total, column total, and so on. Click on percentage of grand total. You can click on percentage of grand total when you want the percentage, and you give OK. Now, when you do it, the data gets converted into percentage. I know that South has 46%, East has 17%, Central has 26%, and West has 10%. Now you can go to pivot table analyze, pivot chart, and for percentage, what kind of chart we will be using? What is the best chart for displaying percentage values? We have learned this in the class. Pie chart, right? Click on pie and you can select the pie chart, give OK. The minute you give OK, your pie chart is present. Right? Your pie chart with the percentage values are present. So do this, everyone. Click on the drop down in sum of wine, value field settings, and go to show values as. Here, change it to percentage of grand total. Right? And then create a pie chart. Do this, everyone, and then we will move on. Try doing this. You have done great. Okay, guys, I'm giving you 2 questions on the chat. Try solving it. Everyone, I've given you this. Please solve these two questions. Once you have done these two questions, we will move on. So I'll give you time for another 4 minutes. By 9:11, we'll be moving on to the next concept. Please make sure you have solved the question what I've given on the chat. Okay, so you have another 2 minutes. Try to solve these two questions. You have done great. All right, I guess we can move on. Now we'll move on to the next question. And for this question, I'll be, or we'll learn a new concept here. More than a question, we'll learn a new concept here. Let's give the thing, create a bar chart for the total sales of fish across each region or region, will do it later, across each segment code and make it dynamic. Dynamic using region. Guys, I've given you a question on the chat. Have a look at that question. It says create a bar chart for the total sales of fish across each segment code. Now this is very easy, right? Creating a bar chart is nothing. You just drag and drop the values, click on a pivot chart and your bar chart is ready. But it is mentioned that make it dynamic by using region. Now, how do we do it? Have a look at this. I'll explain to you the concept here, and it's very important because we will be knowing about the concept of slicer. So let's understand what is slicer. I'll take the segment code, I'll drop it on row, and I'll take this fish column, I'll drop it on value. So now I have the data here, row label and sum of fish. This data is present. Now this needs to be made as a bar chart. So once you have this data, pivot table analyze, pivot chart, just give OK. I'll be needing it as a bar chart, and this is what I'll make one change here. I'll add a data label. So click on this chart. You have this plus icon on the right side. Click on that and click on data label. It's very simple. You have the chart here. Now, what do you mean by a dynamic? What do you mean by dynamic chart? Let's understand this. Now, this is for all the regions. What if you want it for a specific region? What if you want to see this data only for South region? Or what if you want to see this data only for West region? Now, there are ways you can add it as a filter, but instead of adding it as a filter, I'm going to make it two things. One is I'm going to make it dynamic, and the second one is I'm going to make it a little interactive. So how does this work? I have this chart. Select this chart, go to pivot chart analyze on top. Here you have an option called as insert slicer. You can click on insert slicer and you have all these options here. I'll repeat this. Once you have okay, I'll give you all a minute. Create till this bar chart, and then we will talk about the slicer column. Now, once you have this, go to pivot chart, analyze, click on insert slicer. And here the dynamic column should be based on region. So I'll just select region. I'll give OK. Now what happens is you have this region here, right? You can see that the regions are present. Now look at what happens. See, just take any value, for example. The highest one is TRX, which is 31944. Now when I click on East, can you see the data changes? Instead of 31,000, it has now become 5,000. When I click on Central, the data changes. This is what you call as a dynamic chart. This chart changes every time. Whenever you click on any region, the chart gets filtered based on that region. This is the idea of a dynamic visual. I'll repeat how to get the slicers. Click on this chart, go to pivot chart, analyze, go to insert slicer and click on region column. You give OK, this is your slicer, right? And here you can click on any value which would change your chart. It is not only changing the chart, it is also changing the table. So both would be changed. Are you all clear with what is the slicer? What is the purpose of the slicer? Is this making sense? Okay, try this everyone. Try creating a slicer. I hope you have done this. Create a pivot chart for the average income across each region and add marital status as a slicer. This is one question. I am also sending you another question. Create a pivot chart for the market share of what have we not done? Suite across each education and add source code as a slicer. Okay, solve these two questions. As usual, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll give you time till 9:23. Try solving these two questions. After that, I'll also solve these two. But first, I want you to try. So I'm going to give you the next 5 minutes. Please try this and then I'll solve it. Once you have done, you can just let me know. Yes, you have 1 more minute. Try solving these two. After that, I'll also solve it. Okay. Great. I can see a lot of you are doing it. Others, please try. Okay, have a look. I'll be solving it. Let's go one by one. The first question is a pivot chart for average income across each region, and marital status would be the slicer, right? So let's get this. First, let us get the average income for each region. For that, you need to take the region column and drop it on rows. You need to take the income column, drop it on value, but make sure that you change it instead of sum. Okay, 1 minute, I'll just clear all the filters. Yeah, and then I'll change this from sum of income to average. See, this is the average income across different region, but I also need to create a slicer. Maybe we'll create a chart first. Okay, right. You can see the chart is created. Let's add the data label. Now we need to get the marital status as a slicer. So pivot chart, analyze, click on slicer, and here you can select this marital status. Now, if you click on the different marital status, let's say single, the value would change. For single people, this is the average income. For the people who are married, this is the average income. If you want to select multiple values, you can also press Control and you can select. Right? When you click on Control and you select, two values together could be selected. It's not just one, but you can also select multiple values together. This is the solution for the first question. Let us solve the second one where we need the market share. So what was the question? The market share of SWEET across each education. And let's do it. Just give me a minute. So I'll copy this. We need the market share of SWEET across each education. So take education, drop it in row, take SWEET and drop it in value. The sum of SWEET, you can change this to show value as percentage of grand total. This is the market share and get it as a pie chart. For percentage, you should always be getting it as a pie chart. Now that you have the chart, we will try to add a slicer here for source code. So click on this chart, click on pivot chart, analyze, insert slicer, and source code is going to be your slicer. And here you can see I press 1, the value all changes. I press 2, the value changes. 3, the value changes. 4 also the value. So these are ways in which you can create dynamic charts. And when you work on a real project, creating dynamic charts are very important because in your work, in your management or your boss may ask you to create dynamic charts. So you should have a clarity on how to create this, how to solve it. Please solve this, solve both the questions. And once you have done, let me know. I'll give you a minute more. If you have not done, please solve this question. I hope you are done with both the questions. So guys, are you clear with what we covered today? Any doubts on the topics what we learned today? So we learned about slicers, we learned about pivot charts, we learned how to change calculations from a normal value to a percentage of grand total. Right? Whatever we have learned today, it is important. And with this, we come to the end of today's session. We have also completed pivot tables. So from tomorrow's session, I'll go on into some other concepts that is there on Excel. So please do attend the sessions properly. And for the people who have joined late, whose first class or second class is today, please refer to the link that I'm giving you. I'm also putting a link for the feedback form. Market share means it's a percentage. For example, let's say 1,000 food orders are being done every day. And out of 1,000 food orders, 800 food orders are delivered by Zomato and 200 food orders are delivered by Swiggy. Then it means 80-20. 80% of market share is with Zomato and 20% is with Swiggy. Like this, the percentage of value is what you call as a market share. So I hope you're clear on this. So with that, we come to the end of today's session. So thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. Have a good night and we'll meet tomorrow. Thank you, guys.